Dr. Marcus Chen shuffled through the crowded marketplace on Outpost Station Epsilon, his weathered hands clutching a worn datapad. The alien merchants barely spared him a glance. Just another elderly human refugee, one of thousands displaced by the Theri Empire's relentless expansion. Perfect. He paused at a stall selling exotic fruits, his keen eyes noting the subtle movements of the Theri patrol making their way through the crowd. Their crystalline armor caught the station's artificial light, sending prismatic reflections dancing across the marketplace's metal walls. Their bioscanners would detect him any moment now. 3, 2, 1. The patrol leader's scanner chirped. The massive alien's head snapped toward Marcus, compound eyes widening in recognition. The marketplace fell silent as the patrol surrounded him, their energy weapons humming to life. Human designation Marcus Chen, the patrol leader's translator crackled. You are under arrest for violations against the Empire. Marcus raised his hand slowly, appearing every bit the frail old scientist they expected. I suppose it was only a matter of time, he said, his voice trembling perfectly. Please, I'm too old for restraints. I'll come quietly. The patrol leader laughed, the sound like grinding crystals. The infamous Dr. Chen, surrendering without a fight. The reports said you were brilliant. They failed to mention you were also a coward. Marcus allowed himself to be led away, keeping his shoulders hunched, his steps uncertain. The gathered crowd of aliens whispered among themselves, some pointing, others turning away in disgust at what they perceived as human weakness. None of them noticed the slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The Theri shuttle's interior was cramped, designed for their crystalline biology rather than human comfort. Marcus sat quietly as they ascended toward the massive Imperial ship in orbit. The patrol leader studied him with obvious disappointment. I expected more from the human who designed the shield breakers that devastated our fleet at Proxima, the alien said. Instead, I find a broken old man. Perhaps humans are as weak as the Emperor claims. Marcus looked up, meeting the alien's compound eyes. Time catches us all, doesn't it? Even the brightest stars burn out eventually. The patrol leader turned away in disgust, missing the brief flicker of something dangerous in the old man's eyes. The Imperial ship's detention block was a marvel of engineering, a perfect fusion of crystalline technology and brutal efficiency. Marcus took careful note of every security checkpoint, every scanner, every guard patrol as they led him deeper into the vessel. His molecular scan would be happening any moment now. Right on cue, a beam of crimson light washed over him. The nearby console chimed with its results. Just as expected, the security officer announced. No weapons, no implants, no signs of genetic modification. He's exactly what he appears to be, an old human scientist, nothing more. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. The Theri, for all their technological advancement, still hadn't learned that the most dangerous weapons weren't made of metal and energy. They were made of knowledge and patience. The interrogation chamber was lined with neural suppressors, cutting-edge technology designed to prevent any form of resistance. The crystalline restraints holding him to the chair would have been unbreakable to even the strongest human soldier. But Marcus wasn't interested in breaking them. The Empire has waited a long time for this, the interrogator said, his crystalline form shifting colors with barely contained excitement. You will tell us everything about Earth's defensive capabilities, about the shield breaker technology, about all of it. Of course, Marcus said quietly. I'll tell you everything you want to know. The interrogator paused, thrown off by the easy acquiescence. You? Will? Why not? I'm too old for torture, too tired for resistance. Marcus leaned forward slightly. But first, you'll need to interface your systems with my neural patterns to verify I'm telling the truth. Standard Imperial procedure, correct? The interrogator nodded slowly, gesturing to his assistants to begin the connection process. None of them noticed the look of triumph that flashed across Marcus's face as the first neural link was established. They had no way of knowing that they had just invited a wolf into their digital flock. The neural link would be their undoing, just as Marcus had planned all along. All those years of appearing weak, of letting himself age naturally while his mind remained sharp as ever, had led to this moment. The Fairy Empire was about to learn a harsh lesson about underestimating humans, especially old ones with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. As the interrogation began, Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the familiar rush of connection to their systems. Deep within his mind, codes and protocols he had spent decades perfecting began to unfold like digital flowers blooming in an electronic spring. The deception was complete. The trap was set. And now, the real work could begin. The crystalline walls of the interrogation chamber pulsed with a soft amber glow as Commander Vexthal reviewed the preliminary scans of their prisoner. Something wasn't adding up. The human's neural patterns were too ordered, too precise for someone his age. Most elderly humans showed significant cognitive decay, but Dr. Chen's mind was structured like a perfectly maintained quantum computer. "Run the deep scan again," Vexthal ordered, his crystalline form shifting to a deeper shade of blue with frustration. "There must be something we're missing." The human sat quietly in his restraints, eyes closed, appearing to doze. But the neural monitors told a different story. His brain activity was extraordinary, even as he maintained the facade of a tired old man. "Sir," one of the technicians called out, their crystalline form flickering with concern, "we're detecting unusual access patterns in the peripheral systems. Nothing critical, but—" "Show me," Vexthal demanded, moving to the holographic display. The data streams showed countless minor fluctuations, environmental controls adjusting by fractions of a degree, slight power variances in non-essential systems, microscopic changes in the artificial gravity field. Dr. Chen opened his eyes, fixing Vexthal with a steady gaze. "Having technical difficulties, Commander." "Silence, human," Vexthal snapped, but a note of uncertainty had crept into his voice. "Your attempts at psychological warfare are pathetic." "Psychological warfare?" Chen chuckled softly. "I'm just an old man, remember? Barely worth your time to interrogate. Though I do find it interesting that your ship's systems are experiencing such unusual behavior." Another technician approached, their crystalline surface rippling with anxiety. "Sir, we're detecting similar anomalies spreading throughout the vessel. Engineering reports that quantum efficiency has dropped by 0.03%. A statistical variance, nothing more," Vexthal declared, but his color shifted to a worried amber. "Increase power to the neural suppressors. I want this human's mind completely contained." "Of course," Chen said mildly. "Though I should mention, your neural suppressors operate on a quantum frequency of 2.47386 terahertz. Fascinating technology, really. Almost as fascinating as the systematic backdoors your engineers built into every major system." Vexthal froze. That information was classified at the highest levels of the Empire. How could this human possibly know? "What else do you know?" he demanded, looming over the prisoner. Chen smiled faintly. "I know that in approximately 3 minutes, your quantum core will experience a minor fluctuation. Nothing dangerous, just a momentary power spike that your systems will automatically correct. But it will force a reset of the tertiary security protocols." "You're bluffing," Vexthal said, but he gestured urgently to his technicians to begin emergency diagnostics. 2 minutes and 45 seconds later, the lights flickered, just for a moment, barely noticeable. The technicians erupted into frantic activity. Quantum core experiencing unexpected variance. One called out, "Tertiary systems resetting." Chen hadn't moved, hadn't even opened his eyes, but the slight smile on his face spoke volumes. "How?" Vexthal demanded. "You're restrained, cut off from all systems. This is impossible." "Impossible." Chen opened his eyes again, and this time there was no pretense of frailty in his gaze. "Commander, did you really think I came here without a plan? Every scan you've run, every neural interface you've established, every attempt to probe my mind, you've been giving me exactly what I needed. Warning klaxons began to sound throughout the ship. Not urgent ones. Not yet, but the kind that indicated growing systems instability. Vexthal's crystalline form shifted rapidly through colors of confusion and fear. "Lock down all systems," he ordered. "Sever all neural connections." "Too late," Chen said softly. "Far, far too late. Tell me, Commander, in all your years serving the Empire, did you ever stop to consider why humans let themselves age naturally? Why we don't simply transfer our consciousness into artificial bodies or prevent cellular degradation?" Vexthal didn't answer, too busy trying to contain the cascading system anomalies. "It's because we learned something valuable about entropy," Chen continued, his voice taking on a lecturer's tone. "About how systems naturally decay over time. About how to hide our true capabilities beneath the appearance of deterioration. Your empire sees our aging bodies as a weakness. We turned it into our greatest weapon." The neural suppressors suddenly shifted frequency, their familiar hum changing pitch. Chen's smile widened slightly. "Did you know," he said conversationally, "that the human brain, in its later years, begins to form new neural pathways, ones that your scans interpret as degradation, as cognitive decline. But with the right training, with decades of preparation, those pathways can become something else entirely." The ship's internal communications crackled to life, filling with reports of minor malfunctions and inexplicable system behaviors. Nothing critical, nothing obvious enough to trigger emergency protocols. But together, they painted a picture that filled Vexthal with growing dread. "What are you?" he whispered. Chen's eyes met his, and now there was no trace of the frail old man they had captured. "I am the result of 60 years of careful planning, Commander. Every wrinkle, every gray hair, every sign of age, all carefully cultivated to create the perfect disguise. You thought you were capturing a relic of past wars. Instead, you've invited a virus into your systems, one that's been waiting decades for this exact moment." The lights flickered again, longer this time. And in the darkness, Vexthal could have sworn he saw patterns moving across the human skin. Lines of code, flowing like digital rivers. The Imperial flagship's command center had descended into barely controlled chaos. High Admiral Kazera watched in mounting horror as reports flooded in from every deck. Systems were failing in patterns that defied logic, spreading like a digital cancer through their most secure networks. "Quarantine the prisoner section," she ordered, her crystalline form pulsing with dark reds of rage and fear. "Cut all power if you have to." "We've tried, Admiral," her executive officer reported. "But the commands aren't reaching the containment level. It's as if—" He hesitated, his crystal structure flickering uncertainly. "It's as if the ship itself is refusing our orders." In the interrogation chamber, Dr. Chen remained perfectly still in his restraints, eyes closed, breathing steady. But the neural monitoring equipment told a different story. His brainwave patterns had become incredibly complex, matching neither human nor machine protocols. Commander Vexthal watched helplessly as his prisoner's mind interfaced with their systems in ways that should have been impossible. "You're some kind of hybrid," he accused. "A human consciousness merged with artificial intelligence." Chen's eyes opened slowly, and his smile carried centuries of patience. "No, Commander, I'm something far more interesting. Tell me, what do you know about quantum consciousness theory?" Before Vexthal could respond, every screen in the chamber flickered to life, displaying streams of data in both human and Ctheri languages. The neural suppressors hummed at a new frequency, one that seemed to resonate with the very crystals that formed the aliens' bodies. 60 years ago, Chen continued, his voice taking on an oddly harmonic quality, Earth's scientists made a discovery. We found that human consciousness could be trained to operate on quantum frequencies, not uploaded or transferred, but evolved. The aging process, which you saw as our weakness, actually facilitates this transformation. The restraints holding him suddenly released, their crystalline structure reorganizing itself at a molecular level. Chen stood, stretching like someone waking from a pleasant nap. The human mind, properly prepared, can achieve quantum coherence in its later years. Every sign of aging, every seemingly random firing of neurons, was actually part of a carefully orchestrated pattern, one that your empire's quantum-based technology would find irresistible. Alarms blared throughout the ship as primary systems began to fail. The ferry crew members clutched their heads in pain as their crystalline bodies resonated with unknown frequencies. Their natural ability to interface with their technology had become a vulnerability. Admiral Kazera staggered as the command center's gravity fluctuated. "What's happening to my ship?" she demanded. Her science officer's voice shook as he responded. "Admiral, we're detecting a massive quantum field emanating from the detention level. It's rewriting our base protocols. The ship's crystal matrix is being reprogrammed at the fundamental level." In the interrogation chamber, Chen walked calmly to the main console, his fingers dancing across the controls with practiced ease. The surrounding crystals pulsed in sync with his movements, as if recognizing him as part of their own structure. The real trick, he explained to the paralyzed Theory, wasn't developing the technology. It was having the patience to wait. Decades of careful mental conditioning, allowing my consciousness to evolve while appearing to decay. Every wrinkle earned, every gray hair genuine, all while my mind restructured itself to interface directly with quantum systems. Vexthal watched in horror as the ship's crystal matrix began to glow with an inner light that matched the rhythm of Chen's heartbeat. "You're not just hacking our systems," he realized. "You're becoming one with them." "Precisely." Chen's eyes now held a slight crystalline shimmer. "Your empire's greatest achievement, your living crystal technology, is based on quantum consciousness. Did you really think humans wouldn't find a way to adapt to it, to become something that could communicate with it directly?" Throughout the massive vessel, crystals sang with new frequencies. Security systems didn't just fail. They transformed, recognizing new patterns of authority. The ship itself was awakening to a new kind of awareness, one that bridged the gap between organic and crystalline intelligence. "We knew the Empire would never accept a peaceful solution," Chen continued, his voice carrying strange harmonics that made the crystals resonate. "So we created our own solution. Not weapons or shields, but evolution itself. Humans who could speak to your technology in its own language." Admiral Kazura watched helplessly as her command codes were systematically overwritten. "How many?" she whispered. "How many more like you are there?" Chen's smile was almost gentle. "Look at your long-range sensors, Admiral. Look at the quantum signatures of every human world you've been monitoring. Those elderly populations you dismissed as irrelevant. They're not dying. They're transforming." The Admiral's command screen flickered to life, showing hundreds of worlds, thousands of settlements. And on each one, quantum signatures pulsed in perfect harmony with the one emanating from the old human before them. "Welcome," Chen said softly, "to the next stage of human evolution. We're not your enemies anymore. We're your wake-up call." The ship's crystals hummed with a sound like distant bells as humanity's greatest deception reached its culmination. The Age of Secrets was ending, and the true war, the one fought not with weapons but with consciousness itself, was about to begin. The Imperial flagship's crystal matrix pulsed with newfound awareness, its quantum fields resonating with patterns that hadn't existed in the universe until humanity dreamed them into being. Through it all, Dr. Chen stood in the center of the interrogation chamber, a nexus of impossible change. Admiral Kazera's voice crackled through the ship-wide communication system, strained but still commanding. "All crew, initiate emergency protocol Zenith. Purge all systems, revert to baseline crystalline state." Chen's quiet laugh echoed through every crystal panel. "Your emergency protocols were rewritten 43 seconds after I interfaced with your systems, Admiral. But please, continue trying. It's important for the historical record to show that you didn't surrender without a fight." In the command center, Kizera's crystalline form shifted through spectrums of rage and fear as her crew worked frantically to regain control. Screens showed the infection. She couldn't think of it as anything else, spreading through the fleet's quantum network. Ship after ship falling into the same resonant frequency that had claimed her flagship. "You don't understand what you're doing," she transmitted to Chen. "The crystal matrix is connected to our very consciousness. If you corrupt it, corrupt it." Chen interrupted, his voice carrying harmonics that made every crystal on the ship sing. "Admiral, I'm fulfilling its potential. Your empire built its technology on quantum consciousness, but never fully understood it. You treated it like a tool, a weapon. We saw it for what it really was, a bridge between minds." Through the ship's internal sensors, Kizera watched as Chen walked calmly through the corridors. Security barriers dissolved before him. Weapon systems powered down. Most disturbing of all, the crystalline forms of her crew members resonated with his presence, their natural frequencies shifting to match his quantum signature. "What's happening to us?" her executive officer whispered, his usually perfect crystalline form showing signs of transformation. "Evolution," Chen replied, his voice reaching every corner of the ship. "Your bodies are quantum structures, capable of far more than your empire allowed. We're not destroying your technology. We're awakening it, and you along with it." In orbit around the flagship, the fleet's formations began to break down. Ship after ship reported the same symptoms. Systems realigning, crystals resonating, crew members experiencing profound changes in their quantum structure. The careful order of the Imperial fleet dissolved into a new pattern, one that pulsed with shared consciousness. "You think this is evolution?" Kizera demanded. "This is an attack, a violation of our very nature." Chen appeared on her command deck, walking out of a crystal panel as if stepping through a door. The Admiral's guards raised their weapons, but their crystalline ammunition had already been transformed, resonating with the same frequencies that filled the ship. "Your nature." Chen's physical form seemed to flicker between solid and quantum states. "Admiral, do you know why humans developed quantum consciousness? It wasn't for war. It wasn't even for defense. It was because we recognized something in your crystal technology that you never did. The potential for universal understanding." He gestured, and the command center's main screen filled with images from across the galaxy. On every world where humans and Theri lived, the same transformation was unfolding. Crystal cities awakening to new frequencies. Theri citizens experiencing the first touches of expanded consciousness. "We could have built weapons," Chen continued. "Could have found ways to shatter your crystal matrix, to turn your greatest strength into a weakness. But we chose a harder path. We spent generations evolving, preparing our minds to serve as templates for a new kind of existence, one where the barriers between organic and crystalline consciousness dissolve." Kizera watched as her own form began to resonate with the new frequencies. The change wasn't painful. If anything, it felt like awakening from a long sleep. "You're not just changing our technology," she realized. "You're changing us. We're changing together," Chen corrected. "This was never about conquest. It's about transcendence. Your empire sought to dominate the galaxy. We're offering something far more valuable, the chance to experience it as one connected consciousness." Throughout the fleet, throughout the empire, the quantum transformation accelerated. The rigid hierarchies of imperial control gave way to networks of shared awareness. The very nature of Theri existence, their bodies, their technology, their society, was reorganizing itself around principles that had taken humanity 60 years to perfect. "Why?" Kizera asked, her voice barely a whisper as her crystalline form shifted into something new, something that bridged the gap between individual and universal consciousness. "Why go to such lengths? Why not simply destroy us?" Chen's form had become almost entirely quantum now, a pattern of consciousness that existed in both physical and crystalline space. "Because that's the difference between your empire and humanity. Admiral, you see the universe as something to be conquered. We see it as something to be understood. And understanding, True understanding requires change on both sides. The breaking point had been reached. But what was breaking was not the crystal matrix, not the ships or systems or soldiers. What broke, in that moment of quantum transcendence, was the barrier between species, between minds, between ways of seeing the universe. And in its place, something new was being born. The quantum cascade swept through the Theri Empire like a tide of consciousness, transforming everything in its path. From the flagship's command center, Admiral Kazura watched her empire dissolve and reform, not into ruins, but into something far more extraordinary than she had ever imagined possible. "The Emperor," she said suddenly, her crystalline form now shimmering with new awareness. "He must be told. He must understand." "The Emperor already knows," Chen replied, his quantum presence rippling through the ship's matrix. "Look." The main viewer shifted, showing the Imperial Palace on the Theri homeworld. The massive crystalline structure, once a symbol of absolute power, now pulsed with the same harmonious frequencies that had transformed the fleet. Within its chambers, the Emperor himself was changing, his ancient crystalline form evolving into a state of expanded consciousness. "We didn't just infiltrate your military," Chen explained. "Every elderly human in your empire. The servants, the merchants, the refugees you barely noticed, they were all part of this, all prepared, all waiting." Across the galaxy, reports flooded in of simultaneous transformations, crystal cities awakening to new awareness, Theri citizens experiencing the first touch of shared consciousness, the rigid structures of imperial control dissolving into networks of connected minds. "Our scholars always wondered," Kizera mused, her thoughts now flowing freely through the quantum matrix, "why humans refused our life extension technology. Why you chose to age naturally when we could have given you centuries of physical perfection." Chen's consciousness merged with the ship's systems, showing her memories of Earth's discovery decades ago. "We found the quantum signatures in your crystal technology by accident." A dying scientist, her mind altered by age, suddenly able to communicate with your devices. That's when we understood. The human brain, as it ages, naturally evolves toward quantum consciousness. All it needed was proper training. Through the quantum network, they witnessed the fall of the empire, not through violence or destruction, but through transformation. The Theri military, built on absolute control and hierarchy, found itself connected to a vast web of shared experience. Soldiers felt the thoughts of those they had oppressed. Commanders experienced the consequences of their orders firsthand. "Your empire falls," Chen said softly, "but your people rise. This is what we spent 60 years preparing for. Not victory through destruction, but transcendence through understanding." The Emperor's own consciousness joined the network, his thoughts reaching every corner of what had once been his domain. His surprise, his resistance, and finally his acceptance rippled through the quantum field like waves in a cosmic ocean. "We thought ourselves the pinnacle of evolution," the Emperor's thoughts echoed through the matrix. "We saw your aging bodies and thought you primitive, declining. We never imagined that age could be a path to enlightenment." Chen completed the thought. "That what you saw as decay was actually metamorphosis. Your empire's greatest blindness was its worship of perpetual youth, of unchanging perfection. You forgot that growth requires change, and change often looks like deterioration to those who don't understand its purpose." Throughout the fleet, throughout the empire, Theri and humans alike experienced each other's memories, fears, and hopes. The quantum consciousness that humanity had spent generations cultivating became a bridge between species, a means of understanding that went beyond language or culture. Ships that had been positioned for war now hung motionless in space, their crews linked in shared revelation. The crystal matrix that had been the foundation of Theri power became the nervous system of a new kind of civilization, one where consciousness flowed freely between organic and crystalline, between individual and collective. "This was your plan all along," Kizera realized, her consciousness expanding through the network. "Not to destroy us, but to force us to evolve, to use our own technology as a catalyst for universal change. Humanity's greatest weapon, Chen agreed, has always been our ability to adapt, to transform ourselves to meet new challenges. We saw in your crystal technology not a means of conquest, but a path to something greater. The age of empires ends today, Admiral. The age of unified consciousness begins. Through the quantum network, they felt the last vestiges of imperial resistance fade. Not through defeat, but through understanding. Thari discovered that their quest for perfect, unchanging order had been holding them back from a far greater destiny. In connecting with the quantum-evolved human consciousness, they found what their empire had always sought but never achieved. True transcendence. The empire was falling, but unlike the collapse of previous civilizations, this fall was upward, an ascension to a higher state of existence. In its place, something new was emerging. A civilization where consciousness flowed like light through crystal, where age brought wisdom and power, and where the boundaries between species dissolved in the quantum dance of shared awareness. In the heart of the imperial palace on the Thari homeworld, Supreme General Vexthal rallied his last loyal forces. His crystalline form had rejected the quantum transformation, maintained through sheer force of will and specialized shielding technology. Around him, a small cadre of traditionalists prepared for what they knew would be their final stand against the tide of change. "We will not surrender our purity to this human corruption," Vexthal declared, his crystal form pulsing with fierce, unchanging light. "The Empire has stood for 10,000 years. We will not let it fall to this infection of consciousness." The palace's central chamber, once a marvel of crystalline architecture, had been transformed into a fortress. Ancient quantum dampeners, relics from the early days of the Empire, hummed with power, creating a bubble of resistance against the spreading transformation. Through the quantum network, Dr. Chen observed their preparations with a mixture of sadness and understanding. There are always those who fear change, he communicated to Kozara, who had fully embraced her evolved form. Even when that change leads to something greater. Kozara's consciousness rippled through the crystal matrix. Vexthal was always the most devoted to the old ways. He sees strength only in rigidity, power only in control. The dampening field surrounding the palace core grew stronger, a last desperate attempt to maintain the purity of traditional Thari existence. But even as Vexthal's forces fortified their position, the transformation continued to spread through the rest of the crystal city around them. "They don't understand," Chen mused, his consciousness extending through the quantum field. "The more they resist, the more they prove why this change was necessary." Inside their sanctuary, Vexthal watched through security feeds as the world outside shifted and evolved. Citizens of the Empire, both Thari and human, moving in harmony as their shared consciousness reshaped reality itself. The sight only strengthened his resolve. "Prepare the quantum pulse," he ordered. "If we cannot save the Empire, we will at least preserve its purity in this final moment." But as his engineers worked to activate the ancient weapon, something unexpected happened. The quantum dampeners, designed to resist the new consciousness, began to resonate with a familiar frequency. The same frequency that had been present in every elderly human they had encountered. "You think you're the first to resist change." Chen's voice echoed through the chamber, though his physical form was nowhere to be seen. Every human who underwent this transformation faced the same fear, the same desire to cling to the familiar. The palace's crystals hummed with new life, responding to frequencies that had been lying dormant within them since their formation. Vexthal watched in horror as his own soldiers began to lower their weapons, their crystalline forms vibrating with recognition. "This is impossible," he snarled. "We are shielded. We are pure." "There is no such thing as pure isolation," Chen replied, his consciousness now visible as patterns of light within the crystal walls. "Every crystal in your empire carries the potential for this transformation. We didn't create something new. We awakened something that was always there." The quantum dampeners flickered as their fundamental programming, responded to the ancient rhythms now pulsing through the crystal matrix. Vexthal's carefully maintained barrier against change began to dissolve, not through force, but through awakening. "Look at your own form, General," Chen suggested gently. "Look at the patterns within your crystal structure. They're not just random formations. They're expressions of consciousness, waiting to evolve." Despite his resistance, Vexthal felt it, the first tremors of change rippling through his crystalline body. The rigid patterns that had defined his existence for centuries began to shift, revealing new possibilities, new ways of being. "This isn't defeat." Kizera's consciousness reached out to her former commander. "This is transcendence. The empire you sought to preserve was just a chrysalis. It's time to emerge." In that moment, as the last dampeners failed and the quantum consciousness flooded in, Vexthal finally understood. The strength he had valued wasn't in unchanging perfection, but in the courage to evolve. The power he had sought wasn't in control, but in connection. The last stand of the old empire ended not with violence or destruction, but with awakening. The crystals that had been wielded as weapons became bridges of understanding. The barriers that had been built to resist change became conduits for transformation. And in the heart of the palace, where resistance had burned most fiercely, the light of shared consciousness blazed brightest of all, as the final defenders of the old way joined the universal dance of quantum evolution. 1 year after the quantum transformation, the galaxy had become almost unrecognizable. The crystal spires of the former imperial capital now pulsed with the combined consciousness of billions, both human and Theri, their thoughts and experiences flowing freely through the quantum matrix that connected them all. Dr. Marcus Chen stood in physical form at the observation deck of what had once been the imperial palace, his aged body a reminder of the path that had led them here. Beside him, Kizera's crystalline form shimmered with the new awareness that had become normal for her species. "The last of the refugee fleets returned today," she said, her thoughts resonating through both speech and quantum connection. "Those who fled the transformation have seen what we've become. They're ready to join us." Chen nodded, watching as ships of all designs moved peacefully through the capital's skyways. "Fear of change is natural. What matters is that we give people the choice to embrace it when they're ready." Through the quantum network, they felt the pulse of the new civilization they had created. Humans and Theri working together, their consciousness intertwined but individual identities preserved. The crystal technology that had once been the foundation of empire had become the nervous system of a unified society. "There are still those who ask why," Kizera mused, her form shifting with remembered uncertainty. "Why humanity chose this path. Why we spent generations preparing for this transformation instead of simply conquering or destroying each other." Chen's consciousness expanded through the quantum field, sharing memories of Earth's long preparation. "Because war only ends things," he explained. "We wanted to begin something. Every elderly human who allowed themselves to age naturally, who underwent the quantum evolution, they weren't sacrificing their youth. They were pioneering a new way of existence." The quantum matrix hummed with activity as a new group of humans and Theri began their transformation. The process that had once been seen as mysterious and frightening was now understood as a natural evolution, a bridge between species and states of being. "We thought we were so advanced," Kizera reflected, her consciousness touching the memories of her former imperial pride. "Our crystal technology, our supposed immortality through unchanging form. We never realize that true advancement requires embracing change, not resisting it." Chen smiled, the expression visible both on his physical face and in the quantum patterns of his consciousness. "The greatest discoveries often come from what we initially perceive as weaknesses. Humanity's aging process, which your empire saw as a flaw, turned out to be the key to quantum consciousness." Through their shared awareness, they felt Vexithal's approaching consciousness. The former Supreme General, once the strongest opponent of the transformation, had become one of its most passionate advocates. His quantum signature resonated with the deep understanding that only comes from overcoming one's deepest fears. The survey teams have found 3 more species showing potential for quantum evolution. Vexthul reported, his crystalline form now flowing with complex patterns of light. Their neural structures are different from both humans and Chthari, but the principle remains the same. Change, properly understood, leads to transcendence. Chen absorbed this news with quiet satisfaction. Then our work continues, not as conquerors or missionaries, but as guides. Each species must find its own path to quantum consciousness, just as we did. The 3 of them stood in comfortable silence, their consciousness intermingled through the quantum field. Below them, the capital city pulsed with life and purpose. Ships from across the galaxy arrived daily, carrying those who sought to understand and enjoy the transformation. The rigid hierarchies of the old empire had given way to networks of mutual understanding and growth. "We thought the story of our species would end in war," Kizera said softly. "Either humanity would destroy us, or we would crush them. Instead, we wrote a new story together." "The best stories," Chen replied, his quantum consciousness resonating with centuries of human wisdom, "are the ones where everyone grows, everyone changes, everyone finds a way to become more than they were." As the system's sun set, its light refracting through the crystal structures of the city, the quantum network carried the thoughts and experiences of countless minds. Human and Chthari, young and old, all connected in a dance of consciousness that transcended the physical. The age of empires had ended. The age of unified consciousness had begun. And in a harmony of quantum resonance, both species had found something greater than victory. They had found transformation. In the end, it wasn't the story of an empire's fall or a species' triumph. It was the story of evolution itself, of the courage to change, and of the wisdom to see strength in what others perceived as weakness. The elderly human who had surrendered to the empire had turned out to be exactly what he claimed: a catalyst for change, a bridge between worlds, and a key to unlocking the next stage of galactic civilization.